Heading to the US, and Hunter Biden is facing 9 new tax charges in a case that could clash with his father's re-election bid. The latest indictment accuses the president's son of spending millions of dollars on an extravagant lifestyle.
Hunter Biden facing another indictment, this time 3 felony and 6 misdemeanor charges relating to his failure to file and pay taxes. Special counsel David Weiss filed the charges in Los Angeles, Hunter's home since 2018. The government alleges the president's son failed to pay at least $1.4 million. According to the indictment, the defendant spent this money on drugs, escorts, and girlfriends, luxury hotels and rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of a personal nature. In short, everything but his taxes. Weiss says instead of paying Uncle Sam, Hunter spent at least $1.6 million in ATM withdrawals and hundreds of thousands of dollars on payments to various women, clothing, and adult entertainment.
Why was he paid these millions of dollars? This is looking more like criminal activity than business activity.
Hunter's lead attorney, Abby Lowell, responding this afternoon.
He has well stated many times that at the depths of his addiction, something that American families have somebody either in their family or they know, is not behavior that he's proud of. But it doesn't make him into a tax felon.
A plea deal with the government fell through in July after a Delaware federal judge questioned what House Republicans insist was a sweetheart deal that would have given Hunter Biden probation but no jail time. The government went back to the drawing board and filed the charges, first in Delaware for alleged firearm crimes, in addition to the California tax charges. In a podcast recorded earlier this week before the indictment, Hunter said he expects his problems to continue thanks to his critics.
I've stopped hoping for an end to this because as long as my dad is president of the United States, they're not going to stop.
Hunter plans to fight the charges and take his chances with a Los Angeles jury. If convicted on all counts, he could face up to 17 years behind bars.
Well, joining me live from Seattle is Patrick L. Schoettmer, Associate Professor of American Politics at Seattle University. Good morning to you. So how serious do you think this is, and what do you think the outcome will be?
It's hard to tell at this point how serious the charges are, given that these charges are actually charges that are fairly rarely brought to court. They're usually pled out. They do bring a fairly substantial potential jail time, but it's going to be being heard in California and Los Angeles, which should be a fairly friendly jurisdiction for him. And even if convicted, I wouldn't expect them to be a particularly long sentence.
All right, well, let's talk about Trump. Blowhard, fascists, and Volodymyr, to some of the insults that were flying in a fiery debate for the Republicans in the United States. Trump not debating yet again. How is this tactic working for him?
It seems to be working pretty well for him, actually. A lot of the Republican base seems to be pretty happy with rallying around him as their standard bearer. A lot of this in reaction to the legal travails that he's facing and his accusation of them being politically motivated. By not appearing on the stage, he's denying them some of the attention that would come with him being on the stage, and also preventing himself from creating a sort of faux pas that might raise questions about either his capability or some of the policy positions that he might want to adopt to make him more electable in the general election.
And who do you think at this stage is the most threat to Trump?
As usual, the biggest threat to Trump is Trump himself. Beyond that, though, it really depends on the outcome of the Iowa caucuses. We see Nikki Haley doing a lot better in the polls in New Hampshire and in South Carolina. But if we see Ron DeSantis perform well in Iowa, we could see people who are opposed to the Trump nomination rally around him. The real issue either way is the anti-Trump constituency in the Republican Party narrowing themselves down to a single candidate. And it's the exact same trouble they ran into in 2016. They were unable to coordinate, and that ultimately led to the Trump nomination.
All right, there's about 39 days now until the Iowa caucuses. How are the polls looking?
In Iowa, most recent polls are showing President Trump at about 45%. We see Nikki Haley and we see Ron DeSantis pretty much neck and neck for second place. And then there's a lot of other also rans, like Vivek Ramaswamy, who was on the stage, who were polling in the low to mid single digits.
And returning to one of our top stories here, Professor, the president of the Palestinian Authority, they have accused the US of being complicit in Israeli war crimes, and that's following the Biden's administration vetoing of a United Nations Security Council vote demanding that immediate ceasefire in Gaza. What's your take and what are you hearing on this?
Well, it's perhaps unsurprisingly an important political issue as well as a moral issue here in the United States as well. The Democratic Party itself is fairly divided over the issue. Democrats, the polls have suggested, are sympathetic to both sides in this conflict. They're not really wanting to see Hamas continue on in Gaza, but they're also not really happy to see the devastation that's being wrought on the Palestinian civilians. The U.S. arguably is the most influential outside actor on Israel's position, and their historic funding, general funding of the Israeli state gives some legitimacy to Palestinian concerns that the U.S. is at least partially to blame for what's happening in Israel and Palestine. That's become an issue within the Democratic Party itself as well.
And what are you hearing in terms of a potential solution and when?
Well, the Americans, I think, definitely want to see this wrapped up sooner rather than later, for both humanitarian reasons, but also because we don't want this to be an important deciding factor in how the 2024 presidential elections are resolved. I've heard that people are pressuring for an end to combat operations by the end of January, at least on the American side. But in the end, it's up to the Israelis on how long this conflict will go.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time and expertise. Thank you very much, Patrick, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, anytime.